Okay, so you know how everybody's heard, like, Beethoven's Fifth, right? Like, it's iconic.
Of course.
But have you ever, like, wondered about the guy who actually wrote that stuff? Today, we're going deep, deep, deep on Beethoven.
A deep dive.
Exactly. We've got these excerpts about his life and career, and let me tell you, this isn't your average Wikipedia summary. This is, like, the good stuff.
Oh, it's juicy. Beethoven's life had it all. Drama, tragedy, triumph. All the ingredients of truly great music.
It's true. Okay, so picture this. 1770, Bonn, Germany. Little baby Ludwig is born. And his family, they weren't just into music. It was like their whole world.
And not just any musical family. His grandfather was a big deal court musician. Back when that meant something. Oh yeah, super prestigious. But the real scene stealer early on. Beethoven's dad, Johann. Talk about a demanding stage dad. This guy was pushing young Ludwig to be like the ultimate child prodigy.
Pushing might be putting it mildly. I mean, Johann even tried to, like, fudge Ludwig's age on those early concert posters.
Oh, absolutely. Anything to make him seem even more precocious.
Right. Like, look at this tiny kid playing Bach. It's a miracle. But here's the thing. Even if his dad had chilled out a bit, Ludwig was the real deal. By 11, he's already composing, even working as, like, an assistant court organist.
Right, and that's what I find so fascinating about this early period. On the one hand, you have this intense, almost suffocating pressure from his father, but on the other hand, Beethoven did have the talent to back it up.
It makes you wonder, would we even have Beethoven without that crazy upbringing?
It's a good question. Like, did all that pressure forge him into the musical giant he became? It's hard to say. But one thing's for sure, he definitely needed an outlet for all that intensity, and luckily, he found it in music.
And not just any music. This was the era of Mozart, Haydn, like the heavy hitters.
The rock stars of their time.
Exactly. So fast forward to 1792. Beethoven is 21. He's already making a name for himself back in Bonn, but he knows he has to get to Vienna.
Vienna was the place to be for a young, ambitious musician.
He's like the music capital of the world.
Yeah.
And everyone there is expecting big things from Beethoven. They're like, Mozart who? This is the new guy in town.
Talk about pressure.
Right. But here's the thing that I think is so cool. Beethoven, he doesn't just try to copy Mozart. He could have easily been like, okay, I want to write a bunch of catchy tunes just like Mozart did, but he doesn't.
Instead, he dives headfirst into studying, working with masters like Haydn, really honing his craft.
Yeah, it's like he knew he had something special, but he wanted to make sure it was like the best version of himself.
And that comes through in his early Viennese compositions. You can hear those influences, especially that elegant Viennese style. But there's this extra something, this boldness, this drama, that it's all Beethoven.
Like, you listen to something like his Pathetic Sonata, and you're like, okay, this guy is playing a different game. He's taking those rules, those expectations, and he's bending them, reshaping them into something totally new.
Exactly, and it's only a matter of time before those whispers turn into a roar, because, well, then there's the deafness.
Yeah, that's the part everyone knows about, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think people realize it wasn't like a light switch. This was a gradual thing, this slow creep of silence that started in his late 20s.
Imagine being a musician. Your whole world revolves around sound, and it's slowly being taken away from you.
That's just heartbreaking. And the excerpts actually mention he even contemplated suicide during this time. He wrote this document called the Heiligenstadt Testament, where he's basically pouring out his soul, wrestling with this immense loss.
It's one of the most raw, honest things I've ever read, but it also shows his incredible strength. He ultimately rejects suicide, chooses to live for his art, to channel all that pain and frustration into his music.
And thank goodness he did. Because that brings us to what's often called his heroic period. And trust me, the name is no coincidence.
It's like all that raw emotion, all that struggle, it just explodes out of the music.
And this is where Symphony No. 3 comes in, right? The Eroica, as in like heroic.
Exactly. And it's not just the title. The music itself is huge, E.E. It's like Beethoven looked around and was like, hold my beer. I'm going to write a symphony that blows everything else out of the water.
Well, he certainly did that. But there's also this whole backstory with Napoleon, right? Wasn't the piece originally dedicated to him?
It was. Beethoven was completely smitten with Napoleon, saw him as this like champion of freedom and enlightenment.
So he writes this massive symphony in his honor. Talk about a tribute.
Right. But then Napoleon pulls a total 180 and crowns himself Emperor of France. And Beethoven is livid. He's like, wait, I thought this guy was one of the good guys.
It's like finding out your favorite band is actually made up of like a bunch of corporate sellouts. Major disappointment.
Totally. But it also reveals something really important about Beethoven. This wasn't just about pretty melodies for him. He was grappling with these huge ideas in his music. Freedom, heroism, the struggle against tyranny.
So it's more than just music, it's like a whole philosophy.
Exactly. And you can hear that struggle in every note of the Eroica. It's powerful, it's defiant. It's Beethoven at his most, well, heroic.
And it's not just the Eroica. This period is just hit after hit. Symphony number 5, the Pastoral Symphony, the Appassionata Sonata.
It's like he couldn't turn off the faucet of creativity, and the music is just so full of life, even with everything he's going through personally.
Speaking of personal stuff, we have to mention the immortal beloved letter. Okay, spill the tea. Who was she?
If only we knew. This is like music history's biggest unsolved mystery. We have this incredibly passionate love letter found after Beethoven's death, and it's simply addressed to his immortal beloved.
So frustrating. Centuries later, and we're still playing guessing games.
Right, but the letter itself, it shows us a different side of Beethoven, the man behind the music, the one who loved deeply, who felt things intensely.
It's a good reminder that even geniuses have a heart. Okay, but this heroic period can't last forever, right? What happens next?
Well, after 1812, things take another turn. He actually composes less, but the work he does produce is just wow. This is when we enter his late period, and it's a whole new chapter in Beethoven's story.
It's like this whole other side of him we haven't seen before. Kind of like the sequel nobody expected, but it turns out to be like the best one.
You know, it's true. And you can really feel that shift inward in his music, especially in those late string quartets. There's this intimacy, this complexity. It's like he's having a conversation with himself, and we're lucky enough to eavesdrop.
And the thing is, he's having this incredibly complex musical conversation, and he can't even hear it himself. It just blows my mind.
It really does make you question everything you thought you knew about creativity and the human spirit, you know, to be completely shut off from the world of sound, but still be able to create these masterpieces. It's almost unbelievable.
Totally. So how did he even do it? Like, did he just imagine all those sounds in his head?
He did. We're lucky to have these notebooks he used called conversation books from this later period.
Okay, conversation books. Tell me more about those. What are they exactly?
So, because he couldn't hear, people would write down what they wanted to say to him in these books, and he would either write back or respond verbally.
So we get to read these actual conversations between Beethoven and his friends.
We do. And they're fascinating. You see his humor, his frustrations, his day-to-day struggles. They paint a very human portrait of this musical giant.
It's like we're getting a glimpse behind the curtain, seeing the wizard at work.
Exactly. And speaking of wizardry, we have to talk about Symphony number 9, specifically that iconic Ode to Joy chorus. It still gives me chills every time I hear it.
It's one of those pieces of music that just like transcends time and space. You know, everyone knows it, everyone loves it. But I bet most people don't realize that was Beethoven pushing the boundaries yet again.
Right. A symphony with a chorus. That was practically unheard of at the time. But Beethoven, he never was one to shy away from a challenge.
More like he embraced the challenge.
Yeah.
He was like, hold my beer. I'm going to write a symphony that'll blow your minds, A.D. make you want to sing along.
And he totally pulled it off. I mean, think about it. This is a man who's completely deaf, isolated from the world, and in a way most of us can't even imagine. And he creates this piece of music that's all about joy, brotherhood, the unity of humankind.
It's like a big warm hug in musical form.
It really is.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. The difficult childhood, the triumphs and tragedies, the deafness, the late masterpieces. If you had to pick one thing for people to remember about Beethoven, what would it be?
You know, for me, it's the sheer power of his will. This was a man who faced every obstacle imaginable, but never gave up, never stopped creating. He poured his entire being into his music, and in doing so, he gave the world something truly extraordinary.
It's like he was saying, yeah, life can be tough, but you know what? We can overcome anything, even silence, with a little bit of creativity and a whole lot of heart.
Beautifully said. And that is the legacy of Ludwig van Beethoven.
Well said. And on that note, a huge thank you to all of you for joining us for this deep dive into the life and music of a true icon. We'll see you next time for another fascinating journey into the heart of history, science, or culture. Until then, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep the music playing.
Smash that like button.
Please subscribe.
Exactly. We're going to see what makes those effective or not so much.
Thanks for tuning in to History Pod Channel. We hope you enjoyed this dive into history. If you did, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more fascinating stories from the past. Your support helps us bring history to life every day. Stay curious, stay informed, and we'll see you in the next episode. What lesser-known historical figures do you think deserve more attention? Get people talking in the comments.
Ooh, I see what you mean. It's not just liking and subscribing, but actually engaging with the topic.
Exactly.
Until next time, stay curious, everyone.